American National is proud to support No Ceiling, helping to tell the stories of professional women. American National is dedicated to providing paths for leadership and advancement through the Women's Forum, a group of female leaders who provide encouragement, mentorship, and advocacy for American National female employees. With 4 corporate locations in Galveston and League City, Texas, Albany, New York, and Springfield, Missouri, the opportunities for leadership advancement are vast. American National believes taking care of business starts with taking care of its employees.
I remember when my dad would receive a paycheck, he would, I remember sitting on his lap and he going through item by item on that paycheck. Like, here's the gross amount that I made. Here are all the taxes that are taken out, the Social Security and all these things. He broke it down for me. He goes, so this looks like a large number. He goes, but this is what I'm actually taking home.
Today's guest is Restaurateur Anne Baker. She's the co-owner of downtown's Finnegan's Wake, Civil Kitchen, and Tinga Tacos. Her work in the hospitality industry started just as she became a teenager, bussing tables at a family friend's restaurant. She grew up poor, the daughter of immigrants from Korea. Her parents taught her the value of $1 and hard work, and Anne says those values are peppered throughout her life. And they were crucial as she had an unexpected opportunity to become a bar owner in her early 20s. We'll talk about what it's like growing up as a first-generation American and how she sees her parents and her childhood in a new light after becoming a mom herself. From SBJ Podcasts, I'm Christine Temple, and this is No Ceiling, a show that goes in-depth with local women, sharing their journey to the top of their professions and the challenges and triumphs they faced along the way. They're rewriting the script on success, and there's no ceiling. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Anne.
Thanks for having me.
So you are part of the brains behind some of Springfield's beloved eateries. So, of course, we have Tinga Tacos, Civil Kitchen, and Finnegan's Wake. Tell me where your love of food and hospitality comes from.
I think it was one of those things where I was ingrained in it as a child. Growing up, my parents' friends owned a bunch of restaurants, and, so we would visit quite frequently. And then when I started working when I was quite young to try to pay for some things I really wanted, it just naturally came to me.
So then tell me a little bit about your childhood, because you grew up in the Springfield area, right?
Yes.
Okay. And your parents are immigrants?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. So my parents moved to Springfield almost 45 years ago. My dad was actually accepted to the 4-H program at Mizzou. And once he got there, he realized that he can't speak English very well. And so college was clearly off the tables for him, but an opportunity came up in Springfield. He moved down here. My mom joined him later on, and we grew up here. Me and my siblings, there's 4 of us. And it was, looking back, probably, I couldn't have asked for a better childhood. Back then, if you asked me, it would probably have been a bit different answer, but looking back, I'm very thankful for the childhood I had.
So much of the things that make us adults are found in those childhood years, So, tell me about the experience of having immigrant parents and, because of course they would have struggled being the first people in their family to be, coming to the States and the English not being their first language. And, you mentioned the poverty aspect. What was that experience like as a kid growing up with those parents?
It's honestly crazy. I look back, and now that I'm a newly mom, I have a toddler, I only have one, and, I have 4 siblings, there's 4 of us, and how my parents did it is a mystery to me, honestly. Again, the language barrier. Mm-hmm. My father had to work all the time just to pay the bills. My mom was at home with 4 kids. God knows how, keeping the house clean and doing whatnot. And on top of that, it's not like we were just sitting at home, glued to the TV and whatnot. She got us active in any community activity possible that really helped us grow into the different fields that we're in, whether it was sports or the arts or anything like that. So I don't know how they did it, and I'm in awe of how they raised us. Back then, too, I do remember, one of the first times I ever had a friend come over. I believe I was in first grade or so, and it was super exciting for me. I remember, helping clean the house up, and she came over, and she was actually supposed to spend the night. And I remember, an hour or 2 in the night, she was crying, and she made my mom call her mom, and like she actually came and left and picked her up. And we didn't know what the issue was at the time, but I remember the next day when she was talking to me, she's like, your house smells really funny. Like, I couldn't stay there any longer. And, I, at that point, like, didn't realize, like, kimchi is a very, very popular Korean dish, but the beauty of kimchi is the garlic, the fermentation, things like that. And it's a very potent ingredient. So the whole house, apparently smelled like that. Clearly, I don't know that as a child because that's the house that I grew up in. But I remember when she told me, I was just mortified, and I was almost angry at my parents. Like that's a staple in our diet. Like a lot of what we ate as kids actually came straight from our garden. And so my parents made kimchi, like that's what we ate with rice and whatnot. So that was like a large part of what we did. Yeah, I'm like angry about it. And I told them, like, I'll never invite friends over again. And I remember specifically, like, one day I, like, came home from school, and there's, like, this giant freezer and fridge in our garage that they had bought used, but they had put, like, the kimchi then into the garage so it would lessen, that's them just showing what they're trying to do to, like, help us. It was back then, like, yeah, you should do that. But, like, looking back, and I'm like, what? Like, you're a little kid that's, 7 years old or 6 years old is telling you what to do in your household, like, ha. But for them, that it made an impact enough for them to actually do something with it. Like, that just shows what kind of parents they are. I do remember, like, growing up to, like, just little things I would be embarrassed of. Back then it's just your life, the school life, just what kids think of you. And we would have free school lunches, and with that, there's a card. And that card for me symbolized, like, showing other kids, hey, my parents can't afford to feed us, and that was just super, super embarrassing for me. And I'm kind of embarrassed of how embarrassed I was back then now looking back. And, that couldn't have been a point for my parents. They had to have been really sad that I felt so strongly about that. And I wish I could, hug them now back then and let them know, like, hey, like, it grew us into stronger people now. So,
yeah, those experiences shape the way that you think about life now, I'm sure, so much. And you mentioned that you recently had a daughter too. Yes. So yeah,
the connection, like what I see back then and to now, like we've been fortunate to do pretty well with the businesses, and she does have a little bit, quite a bit of different, like, childhood as we did. But for me, like, if she can even get a modicum of, like, a little bit of what I did in terms of appreciation and learning, I will be super lucky. I don't want her to feel like she deserves everything or like she has to earn things. And I hope that I can do a little bit of my parents and instill that in her as well. But that's a confusion thing. Parenting in general is just a whole nother subject for me. Yeah, that I'm still learning on. I am by no means an expert. You kind of think when you have a child, oh, you're all of a sudden you're a mom, you're a dad, like you're a parent, and you should know all the answers. I have friends who are having kids now, and they're asking me all these questions, and I don't even know the answer to that. Just because you become a parent does not mean you know everything on that topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
for sure.
So then, you had to start working super young, which was partially, was that due to your parents' income situation? Were you trying to get certain things that maybe they couldn't provide for you?
I think that for me, so it was something that they actually didn't welcome, in the sense of they didn't push that, because for them the priority was school. It's always been academics and whatnot, and I'm not trying to get stereotypical, but they want you to be a professional, a doctor, an attorney, or anything like that. So when I let them know, because there were certain things, and it's just the more superficial things that I kind of wanted that all the other kids were having, whether it was scrunchies or jellies, as a kid, that I couldn't have because a lot of what we had was all passed down or was given through charity. So when I was a little bit old enough to be able to work, and my friends' parents offered us jobs, I was the first one to do it. But my parents still had to be involved in that. They have to pick you up. It's still another job for them to like have their kid having a job too. So for them to let me do that was really nice. But they definitely did not want me to do that. And they knew the first thing they said was, if your grades drop, like, you're done, you're out. Mm-hmm. So.
So then tell me about that first job, because that was in the restaurant industry.
It was.
Right? Yeah.
I hated it. I mean, I really, truly hated it. I had to bus tables. It was in a Japanese steakhouse. And, for me, it was just heavy dishes. It was super busy restaurant as well. So I was just constantly holding heavy bins. The older people that were at least college age and above, like to me, they treated me like this little kid, which I was. And I just hated it. But when that paycheck came, it was eye-opening for me. Like, it was such a huge amount, like, for me, that it was unbelievable, and that helped me push through anything that I disliked about the job.
That's amazing that you understood, like, the value of a dollar at 13, 14 years old. Was that something your parents taught you?
They did, and that was, like, it's so taboo. I mean, even this day and age, to talk about your income, to talk about your check, how much money you make, and that was completely transparent with my family. I remember when my dad would receive a paycheck, he would, like, I remember sitting on his lap, and he going through item by item on that paycheck. Like, here's the gross amount that I made. Here are all the taxes that are taken out, the Social Security and all these things. He broke it down for me. He goes, so this looks like a large number. He goes, but this is what I'm actually taking home. Now, with, 6 people in our family, like, this is what I'm paying for our mortgage. This is what I had to pay for food on, for the table. Like, this is what it's left with. Like, this is why you can't have, that Umbro jacket. And this is why you can't have, those fancy things. And it, like you said, it really helped me become super aware of, like, I don't want to call it cheap by any means, but they were just incredibly intelligently frugal, that it's something that I realize that I think about all the time now as an adult. And I think it's helped me in my situation.
So then you have that first job in the restaurant, but, like, what was your goal for what you wanted to do in college?
Honestly, so that was the weird, with the job, like, it was enough to, even though it gave me that money that I really wanted to spend on all those little trinkets and such, because of what my parents instilled in us, like, I saved the majority of everything that came in. And so when I went to college, I was very fortunate, because I remember specifically, like, after I graduated, during my senior year of high school, my dad being like, hey, you did a really good job in college or high school. If you want to go to college, like, you have to get scholarships, because we can't help you. Like, there's $0 coming from us. So it made me work. I applied for scholarships that I would never have applied for, including, like, a pageant, which if my friends know me, like, I'm very not pageant-like, you can say, but I was able to score a full ride, and with that, I looked back at how I grew up, and so something I wanted to do was help kids who grew up in poverty-like situations as well. So I was in nonprofit. I actually interned at 2 local nonprofits here in town, and the fact that I went the opposite direction, like, at college graduation, I had a job lined up, ready to move, ready to go, and last minute, I decided to stay in the restaurant industry.
Yeah. So tell me about that story too, because it's a really cool way of how you got into business ownership, because you'd worked in restaurants from the time you were like 13, 14 years old, and then you're ready to go move on to what you thought was like what you were going to do, your path, your dream. And so tell the story of, like, what stopped you, what kept you here.
It's still, like, a surprise to me, because then if you would have told me, like, in the future this is what you're doing, I would have been shocked. I was super passionate about it, and but I didn't realize whenever all of a sudden I had on the table my business partner, my then business partner. He was my boss. I was running his restaurant for him, and when he put it on the table of, hey, either can you stay? I would like for you to stay. I'll offer you half of the business. If so, like, for me, that was something that I didn't even think was a possibility. And from there, it completely led me to a different path. I think the biggest thing for me, though, because I almost felt like I was disappointing, the whole reason why I went to school was the whole nonprofit being to help people. I was disappointing people or future kids or future families I could be helping. But that's why one of the priorities for us in the restaurants was to be able to give back through the restaurants. At one point in college, I was actually looking into going to the Peace Corps. And I had a gentleman, he was a very successful business owner, and he asked me why. And I remember specifically kind of being confused about that, because he is a huge philanthropist, and he gives so much back to the community. And I'm like, it's kind of weird that you're kind of asking me why. And he's like, just the way I'm thinking it, he goes, maybe you get, shipped off to a small town. He goes, how many people do you truly think you'll impact in that town? And I really wasn't understanding where he was going at the time, but he's like, maybe one child, maybe one family. He goes, maybe if you're doing really well, like the community, you're killing it. Maybe you're helping the whole town. He goes, but for me, like, I'm able to impact a lot of people in the sense that I'm working super hard in something that I'm really good at and I can make a lot of money with, and then give that back to where I'm impacting more and I can control where my dollar goes, opposed to, being able to possibly impact a handful of people. He goes, I think you have that ability to do that as well. And that's stuck to me, ever since. So I feel fortunate to be able to give back. And that's a large reason why, too, like, even whenever I accepted the partnership, like, I knew that was something that we would have to implement. Or for me, I feel like, again, I'm not doing my young self right.
Mm-hmm. So then this is where, like, all the experiences that lead up to a moment, like, they make sense, right? So you're 23, 24 years old, and because of maybe the parents that you had, you were able to save up a good chunk of money. You wouldn't have had that money if you hadn't started working so young and if you hadn't valued money so much.
Yes, and that's the funny thing, though, is like you said, like, I didn't know when I was 13 that that's something I had to save up for, because that opportunity wouldn't have been able to work out itself if I hadn't had done that. So I was, again, it's a full circle thing. My parents teaching me, like, not knowing what I was going to do with that information, and then me taking it to my first job, and then it being able to pay for the ability for me to have partnership in a restaurant that I love. So it was pretty full circle on that. I'm very fortunate.
And so which restaurant was that?
So it was Finnegan's Wake.
Okay.
It was Finnegan's Wake, yep.
So then tell me about, like, those first couple years of being a restaurant owner. So you're 24 years old, you're young, you're female, and you're the owner of this business.
It was very, at the beginning, I was still pretty timid, because if you look around, and especially restaurants, even maybe there are a few women business owners, but like for a bar, because Finnegan's is an all-out bar, it was very rare at the time. A lot of them were male, older male, but definitely male. So, we would be involved in different meetings, like the pub crawl meetings, where you would sit in a room with all the other owners of these businesses, and it's like having a lot of chefs in the kitchen, by the way. So, everyone's just talking above one another, and I would just kind of sit back and listen. And one of the things, because at the time I was still bartending, I thought it was pretty important that I was there on an everyday basis to know exactly what the business that I just purchased was doing, like what actually was happening, whether it was with the employees or the customers and whatnot. And as soon as people would find out that I was the business owner of that establishment, the first thing people would say would either be, hey, who'd you have to bang to get this job? Or, did your mommy and daddy give you this job? And back then, I remember kind of laughing it off, definitely being offended, but laughing it off, like, because the fact that I laughed it off, like, kind of shows that I almost accepted it. And looking back, I remember there's a few instances where I had young females do inappropriate behavior in the bar, a couple including stealing. And I caught them red-handed, and I remember their response, and it was quite literally, but I'm young and dumb, and I'm a young girl. And I was so offended that they would say that. And I'm like, no. I'm like, I am your age. For you to use this as an excuse, as an embarrassment to all the other young females out there, I'm like, if you ever use that as an excuse, I'm a young girl, it better be for something positive. I made this cure. I'm a young female. Like, not because you did something that was bad. And that's now, it was just very embarrassing for me for someone to say that to another female, like, themselves. So
what were some of the things that you had to learn in terms of running the business itself? Because you had the experience, you had the decade of experience in being in a restaurant, but when it came to then now you're actually looking at the finances, looking at the trajectory of the company, and then you're going to open other companies. So, I mean, like, what was that experience like of just learning how to run a business?
I think the first thing I realized is I am an incredibly big micromanager. You know, like I'm a perfectionist when it comes to certain things. And at a certain point, if you want to keep growing, you have to let go and trust people. Like I said, I was bartending 4 or 5 nights a week at that point, and I did that for years. And all it would let, you know, till 2:30 in the morning, I would come in and I would work during the office that but I wouldn't be my best. I would be tired. I would be whatnot. Like it didn't help the business move forward because I happened to be there the, you know, night prior bartending with those few people. What I learned is if you would like to keep growing, you have to basically learn. It's kind of like the story with that gentleman that he had said, like, hey, how many people can you truly affect when you're in that zone and you're maybe you affected 5 people that you're with, the 10 people that you're with. Same with me, like, okay, maybe you helped 50 people in the bar that night and you gave good service. That's great, that truly is, but how much better would you be if you could take that time to step out of that and now you have the time to actually implement a business plan where it's a larger project. You're going to be now doing an actual infrastructure remodel, or you're going to be actually doing promotions and planning for bigger item things that will help even more masses. Now it's going to help thousands of people that want to come in the future. So that was very hard for me to let go because I truly love interacting with people and I love that service side of it, but B, making sure that everyone was doing it correctly. But I've learned at this point, trusting people is the biggest thing, and I've been so incredibly fortunate to have such good people and good employees, now friends, I would consider like closest friends in my life.
With the restaurant industry, I mean, I've heard a lot of people describe it as like that it's a family. Can you just tell me about like what that's like to work with people on long shifts, and then even, you know, as you stepped back a little bit from working at the bar, you're still with them in the trenches. It's a tough industry. The margins are really slim. It's a lot of long hours. I mean, tell me about the family aspect and what that's meant to you.
It's the family aspect is what keeps you going. You know, you don't want to, it's kind of easier to disappoint yourself. You're going to put up with it, like, yeah, too bad I did this. But like, if you know you're going to be disappointing other people that you truly care about as well, that's what's going to push you even further, no matter how tired you are or whatever it may be. So that is what helped, I think, us go, because we kept each other accountable at that point. It is a double-edged sword, though, just because, you know, we joke when you want to take some time off, you want to take it with the people you truly care about and love, which is your family, you know, your friends. And we joke like, hey, it's my turn this time, it's your turn next time. We can't do it together like we would love to do. But other than that, to have that family that you choose is very lucky. Complete trust in them, knowing that they have your best interest and vice versa in your mind and heart. So,
do you remember like whenever your family came into the restaurant and like dined in the restaurant when you owned it, like that first time? Do you remember what that was like? And because of course you, they didn't want that for you.
No,
they had other plans for you.
No, it's so funny that you say that, because I remember all my employees and like everybody who were in that worked that night, they knew about it. Like, oh my gosh, Anne's family is coming in for the first time. How exciting. They must be so proud. And it was so funny. And it's not that I'm trying to reflect them in a negative light by any means, but I do remember them because they're exactly like I am. Like when they walked in and they ate, they were almost like picking, like they could see the things that weren't going right, you know, and in their hearts, I know they were doing it for my best interest. Like, hey, why don't you fix this? Or like, this isn't going right, or I saw this was kind of dirty over, you know, and that's what they were doing for a lot of it. But, you know, they're also very traditional Korean. So like you said, like that's not exactly what they wanted for me. They had friends who had restaurants and that was their life. Like they worked endless hours and they were like, that's not what we want for you at all. And so it wasn't like this thing where they were just super proud of me, you know. Looking back, like now that is something that they can appreciate, but they were really scared that I was going to be someone that would be stuck in the trenches, be working 90 hours a week still. And the fact that I was able to pull back from that, now I think they can see a little bit more that it's a good decision that I made.
So then Civil Kitchen was the next restaurant concept, right, that you were a part of? Or what was the next concept
After Finnegan's, we actually opened up the second rendition of Ophelia's.
Okay.
It's where Gailey's, now a portion of Gailey's was at. We were there for 5 years. And then after that was Civil and Secret Bike Shop. So those opened in the same year. And it's kind of rolls. A lot of times people are like, well, how do you plan that? Like, what do you do? And it's never calculated planning that happens. I call it the stars align. Like the property is there, your business model is there, like you have the people to do it, and it all just happens to happen, work out. Because I would have never ever chosen to open 2 businesses in the same year if that weren't the case.
Right.
So, but it's the right people too. Like I can do the fun part because everyone's like, how do you do it? Oh, this is so hard and whatnot. Like, no, I get to do the fun part, and I feel very fortunate. That's creating menus or atmosphere or whatever it may be. The hard part is managing people. Like to have managers that I trust completely. I appreciate them to no end. But managing people, because that's the most, there's the most room for questionable, like you don't know, it could be extremes because every individual employee is so different, and you never know what you're going to walk into on any given day. So I'm very thankful.
When we come back, Anne talks about the possibility of a resurgence of Secret Bike Shop in Galloway Village, and we'll also talk about the pressure of running 3 restaurants during a global health pandemic. Support for Season 1 of this podcast is provided by presenting sponsor American National Insurance. We'll be right back.
Financial success? It's not just about money. It's knowing how to make the most of it. It helps to have your own banking expert who can offer guidance, new ideas, and smart solutions. At Great Southern Bank, you'll find that expertise along with a full-service team to handle all your personal and business banking needs. Learn what we can do for you at greatsouthernbank.com. Ranked a Forbes 2020 World's Best Bank by our customers. Thank you. Member FDIC.
Springfield Business Journal has been the business authority for over 40 years. SBJ strives to provide the most relevant, timely, and accurate business news you need to make important decisions. Locally owned and operated, Springfield Business Journal helps businesses market themselves to other businesses. Since 75% of the readers are the owner, GM, or VP at the business, SBJ helps your business influence decision makers when it matters most. If you need to raise your profile when businesses are considering your category of service, make sure you are differentiating yourself by using the Springfield Business Journal.
Well, so let's talk about the fun part a little bit too, because Civil Kitchen is, of course, still around. It's right off the square, and it's a super fun concept. You have some cool menu items and lots of beer, and it's a big restaurant too. Tell me about how you created the concept for that, what was involved in the planning of the menu and the theme.
I will have to give Civil Kitchen to credit to like my husband, Clayton. At the time, like I said, Secret Bike Shop and Civil were opening up quite literally, I think like a couple of months apart from one another. It was really crazy. And Secret Bike Shop was kind of like my input, my fingerprints, whereas Civil was his. It's kind of masculine, industrial. And we fell into that. The previous owners of that restaurant, just kind of wanted to get out of it at the time, and we were thinking of how large it was. There's just no way that we would be able to run it. So my business partner of Finnegan's and I knew the situation, and my husband had been working in the industry for a few years at that point. So we asked him and our bar manager at Finnegan's to see what they can do and run with it, and they were able to be a part of it and do great with it. So. Mm-hmm.
Well, so then let's talk about Secret Bike Shop, because that, of course, it's not open right now, although at the last city council meeting, the developer who bought that portion of that area in Galloway said it could see a resurgence if the project is approved. So, like, that's super exciting. But
yes, I know it's been kind of a controversial topic recently in town, and for me, like, I'm usually, people who know me know I don't like expressing, my input when it comes to public matters or especially politics, things like that. Secret Bike Shop was to me, it was like my baby too, because I did come up with a menu and certain things like that. But that aside, I knew the heart of what it was because of the green space. You eat outside. There's outdoor only seating. Like, you're quite literally in a park being out there. And so when the developer came up to us, we told him like the only way that we would reopen that up would be have similar kind of spacing, which I didn't think would be possible at the time, just because I knew it was going to be such a unique development for him. But
Right.
so the fact that he has worked with that and worked with everyone to try to make it what everyone wants it to be is shows me what kind of person he is, and that is someone that I would be open to working with.
So, of course, so you're opening Civil and Seacoast at the same time. What's like the first 6 months to a year like of a brand new restaurant?
It's funny. So for us, like, I always feel like when we open our doors, like, we are 100 steps back. We could probably be working on it for another 6 months to a year before we should truly open. But at a certain point, you have to just tell yourselves, open them up. Let's see what people think. But prepping for it is extremely stressful in the sense of just the construction, making sure your vision actually comes to light. I can see something and I can know I want it and I can see what I want to change about it, but for me to come up with that concept is actually quite hard. My husband actually has a lot more input with that, so he has to put up with me, and he's the one that comes up with a lot of different designs, and at that point I'll look at those designs and kind of see where I would like to get it tweaked. So the partnership there is actually we work very well together, but once you open your doors, the hardest part is people wanting to try you out. You're a new restaurant. Springfield, I know for a fact, everybody knows there's just hundreds and hundreds of restaurants. Mm-hmm. You can quite literally eat at a different restaurant every day for months and months and never re-hit the same restaurant. So for any customer that comes into our restaurants and choose us, like, I feel fortunate because I know you didn't have to do that. But we definitely like to be there. I always watch people eat, almost probably oddly, where I'm like, what is their reaction? Because you'll know instantly after they take that first drink or that first bite what they truly think of your food. And to see a positive reaction is awesome. Like, your hard work, everything you put into it is coming to fruition. But to see the opposite, which we of course have seen, is not heartbreaking, but you're disappointed but it just makes you want to work harder. That person is going to go and leave and they're going to tell 10 of their friends why they want to come back, which is why when I go to a new restaurant, I will never go to a new restaurant once. I will always go 3, 4, 5 times before deciding at that point if it's for me or not for me, because people rework themselves. People will change. And, for the people who eat at Civil, I would say for the first 3 to 6 months, if we went based off that experience alone, I truly don't think we would be open today. And the main reason too is when Civil opened, the bar before it was a bar. We were used to having a bar. Finnegan's is a bar, and we thought that Civil was actually going to be a bar with good food. And we, lo and behold, the food just kicked its butt, and it became a restaurant, something that we were not prepared for. Managing, bartenders and servers is a lot easier than even in the kitchen, because cooking in a kitchen, working in a kitchen is really hard work, and the profit margins for food is a lot less than for alcohol, things like that. So we relearned a lot and quickly in those 3 to 6 months, and hope, luckily we were able to bounce back, and even more luckily people actually came back to try us again, and thank goodness most decided they liked it, so we were lucky.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then you're like, why stop here? Let's open Tinga Tacos.
Again, it's one of those stars align things.
Yeah.
At the time, a friend that I went to high school with, we were best friends since we were in middle school. Her little sister had been in the food industry for a long time, and she had moved back into town from out of state. And we gave her a position at Civil to work with us. And when this property opened up where Tinga currently is, again, we could not open it at that point without someone to actually run it. When we kind of came up to her and asked her if that was something she was interested, because I knew that was her ultimate goal, was to own her own restaurant, everything just aligned up perfectly, and it almost seamlessly went into that next stage.
So, 2020, oh my goodness, it's affecting every industry in such a different way. But when I think about the restaurant industry, just such a massive blow. And anything that was successful before, that doesn't mean it's going to be successful now. It doesn't mean that it's going to remain open. And we saw national stats that 2/3 of restaurant employees lost their jobs, even if it was just temporarily. But Tell me about what this was like for you, and because we're still in it. You talked about how these restaurants are really your family, and you had to let a lot of them go, and you didn't know if they were going to come back. I mean, nobody knew what was going to happen. What was that like for you?
Talk about all your eggs in one basket. Like you think with the 3 restaurants, we're like, oh, we're diversifying because they're all very unique to one another. We don't share a lot of same clientele, and then this happens where it's like, no, everything's going to take a blow, and that was super tragic. But with that, what we had to come down to was, even with us having to furlough or let some of our employees go, what we had to think of was the long-term plan. I can't think and hold to myself, hey, I'm going to try to keep everyone or most of these people as long as possible, because all that's going to do is it's going to help the restaurant deteriorate quicker because we don't have the funds simply coming in to where we were at the capacity before. So do you want a job in the future where it's going to be a lot more stable, or do you want to work for the next couple of weeks, couple of months, and dwindle it down? So that's the decision that we had to come to face with. We kept all our managers on, and we were very fortunate to do that, but they worked hard for us during that time. We worked side by side with them, and it just shows like you have to always be able to change things up. Like you said, things weren't the same as before. We went from strictly basically dine in to go only, to change up our menu. We had to change the root of what we did as a restaurant, like from it's a restaurant from dine-in to go. That's not different at all. Like, we didn't realize what we had to purchase, like what even just inventory supplies wise to make it a successful to-go restaurant, the different advertising that you would have to do than what you would have done before, So it was a learning curve, and I really hope the shutdown doesn't happen again. Obviously, who knows with what's going on, but if it does, I do feel like we would be a little bit more prepared, but it just knows we have to keep ourselves on our own toes and never get comfortable.
Mm-hmm. So what did 2020 teach you about the community that you're in?
Oh my gosh. I mean, everything is full circle, and it really almost like took me aback a little bit of how supportive everybody was when this whole thing went down and the shutdown occurred. The amount of messages and phone calls and everything that I received was crazy. It's nice knowing that people will come to your back, like whenever you're in trouble as well, And one story that really stands out for me was the year prior for Christmas, before this all happened, there was a teacher who wrote to me about how she was hoping that we can give her a gift certificate for a basket that she was going to put for the teachers, because the teachers work so hard and whatnot. But how heartfelt this letter was, it was handwritten and everything, it really touched me. So I went ahead and gave a gift certificate to all the employees there, and I didn't think twice about it. They wrote a thank you card. It was very sweet, but lo and behold, months later, I haven't been in communication with this person. She comes in and she buys large gift certificates because for a restaurant that she knew maybe she wouldn't even be seeing, in 6 months. And the fact that she put that faith back into us, because I could tell she almost just wanted to donate it, but for my pride, of course, she wanted to buy gift certificates for people, and that was just crazy. It affected her. She's in the education system, schools were shut down at the time too, and so for her to even think about this random woman from a restaurant that contacted her months prior really restored my faith in humanity. After that, we've had customers, they're not even like close friends, just coming in like, hey, we want to go ahead and buy gift certificates. And these people, again, full well knowing that this restaurant could have the possibility of not even remaining open down the road, shows what kind of support they're really showing us. So it brought a tear to my eye, honestly.
Mm-hmm. So then you get to open back up, and it's not the same still because, of course, we're walking in with masks and we're staying far apart, and there's still some nervousness out there in the community. But, I mean, what is the dining experience like now? How has it changed, and, like, what do you think might be here to stay?
So since we're at our limited capacity of 50%, we have to have extra staff on just for like sanitation purposes. We're cleaning everything down, and it's something that we are seeing is people are still eating to go and delivery at a large rate. So that's helping supplement income like quite a bit. I think that might be something that might stay, honestly, for at least the next year or so. And we're happy to be able to provide that with the dining in experience. So people are still needing, I think, that human connection. And I think that's why they're still being able to go out. We're really strict because, again, the worst thing that you would ever want is for someone to be exposed or someone to be in danger in your own premises. Like, that would be, for me, one of the worst things that could possibly happen. So I would always rather be overcautious and, like, overdo it than kind of just go with the limited or the minimum of what I could do. So we have people who are, obviously all our employees wear masks, but they're cleaning and sanitizing out front all the time. I hope in the sense when that opens up, I'm kind of almost like hesitant for it to open up to full dining, to tell you the truth. And part of me might, we probably will keep it even limited at that point, just because we're more long-term. Like, yeah, that's great if we could make a little bit more money each day and pay our bills, but I'd rather be successful in the long run than try to get that dollar today.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that the restaurants are still at risk?
I think everyone's at risk, honestly. Like, obviously with school back in session and hearing these numbers just multiplying or whatnot. So again, it's like kind of choosing where you can give and take. Is it feasible to literally be locked up in your house for the remainder of this time? Mm-hmm. I don't know. If it is, that's up to you. Is it something where you need that human interaction? You need to be out and kind of, and maybe do something that's considered a little bit more risky. That's, again, up to you as well. So we're here just to kind of provide the safest atmosphere that we can, and then it's up to you to kind of decide if that's what you're okay with.
So had you been planning any other restaurant concepts like before March, before this craziness happened?
The funny thing is, like, again, a lot of people think, how restaurants happen is that you have this perfect, ideal concept in your head, and then you have this perfect build out, and that's just not what it is. Like, for us, my husband and I, we constantly have 6, 7, 8 concepts in our mind, pretty detailed at all times, because you can't just square peg and triangle hole, like fit things to where they don't make sense. Like, Finnegan's Wake is in a building that's 140 years plus old. It has a lot of character to it, brick walls, old wood flooring, and that character would never show well in a strip mall or in a brand new build. So you really have to fit your concept into something that you're available to, because everyone has a budget or everyone has limitations, and when ideas pop up or locations pop up, that's when we have to ask ourselves, does this concept fit this location? And from there, can it move further? So yeah, we always have 8 or 9 in our pockets.
Yeah. So yeah, I just would love to be a fly on the wall of your home, because it's just like you and your husband, is that something you talk about all the time? Like, do you ever clock out of the office, or is that something that could just come into any conversation?
It definitely is something that is like a double-edged sword, because we are there to be each other's soundboard. And I think because of the conversations we have, even like you said, uncalculated, we are doing family time, all of a sudden something will come up. Those are where you can be the most creative, because sometimes when you lose that spark and you're like, I'll just save that for tomorrow in the office, you're gonna forget the actual the full concept of it. So the fact that we can share it right then when we have that spark of creativity is super nice. However, a lot of people ask us, you guys live together, work together, play together because you're the same friends, how do you do it? At a certain point, you do have to kind of just step back and not talk about work, because we could just do it all day, every day. Things are always happening. But what's made it a lot easier for us actually is our daughter. She's made family, pointing out family time is just so much more important, and we don't want it to where she's looks back at her childhood and all mom and dad did was work. That's definitely not how I want her to think, but because of her, we are a lot more choosy in what we will move forward with. Before you were young, we didn't have a lot of time constraints or anything like that. So if a possible project could come up, we would try to jump on it. And at this point, it has to truly be something that's the perfect scenario for us to move forward with anything else.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys always want to be parents?
No, honestly, that was one of those things that was almost like, hey, if it happens, that would be great, and I know we could do it together. But if it doesn't, I know we would be happy together as well. And after we got married, we basically let's just try for a little bit, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And lo and behold, obviously things happened out. But now that it's happened, I could never see it in a different way, and I'm not by no means I never saw myself as that quintessential mother, that perfect mom that like always has things planned out and can do everything perfectly. And knowing when I talk to moms, because that's how you see them when you're little. Your mom is perfect. You see all moms as being the perfect mom. And then when you finally grow into being a mom, you're like, oh my gosh, this is how moms are. Like, that's crazy, And now I have that, I have other mothers that I talk to, like, we're not perfect, and that's okay, but we provide the best that we can, and sometimes that's the best for what our kids, and everyone's is different. During the shutdown, we had 2 months of no daycare, and so we had construction going on at Civil, so my husband had to be there for most of that because that's his expertise. But for me, I was home with my daughter, and all day, every day, you always question what you're doing. Is she learning? Am I helping her grow, like even like physically? Is she getting enough exercise? Is she eating the right foods? Like, you're constantly questioning yourself, and you want to make it the best situation possible. And now that she's in daycare again, I believe she has the best care possible, and she has it to where she is getting the best of both worlds, because too, I am able to get my work done, and that's for me where I think I can shine as well. But I'm able to come home now, and it makes me only want to be a better mom. I'm in a better mood, and so I know everyone else's stories is different. I commend staying at home moms, because that was just something that was super, super hard for me. So it's what everyone says, it's true. It's a very hard job.
So I wonder too, like if you think about your success and like what that means for your family. And we talked a little bit about this earlier, but like it took one generation for you to amass like real success, and now you've created a role model for your daughter of like a really strong woman in business who did it like 100% on your own. What does that mean for you?
I hope that she is able to do everything on her own. The thing is, for us, like my husband and I have always talked about, and obviously we're going to always provide for her everything that she has to have and needs, but like not once. And for us, it's super important that she grows up knowing that she needs to earn and work for what she wants. Just because she can or has access to it, or people are going to give it to her, like doesn't mean that's what she should be doing. And it doesn't necessarily mean that she has to. I want her to work for something that she wants to do, and she doesn't have to be the best at it, but she has to be her best at it. And that's all I'm asking for at this point. So if she can come out on the end with just knowing that fact, I am very proud of her, but I would just be very happy because I know that she tried her best. So, and even if it's something where she decides, I don't want to run a restaurant, I don't like any of this stuff, I would like to be an artist, or I would like to stay at home and be a stay-at-home mom, or whatever it may be. Again, whatever industry, whatever job or career, I just want her to make sure that it's something that she has a passion for, and it's truly what she wants to do, not because it's something by convenience or she fell into it, or definitely not she's complacent. So I hope I can help push her into that.
And are your parents still alive?
Yes, they are.
Do they live in this area still?
I am the only kid out of my family that stayed in Springfield, so I've been very fortunate. My parents are going on 7 grandchildren now. They live here in town, and they've been able to help babysit and help my daughter grow, and they teach her all the basics that I learned as a child. So I'm super lucky, and plus they're trying to teach her Korean, and just seeing them interact and seeing them be these awesome, like very super involved grandparents, I feel very lucky, and on both sides as well. My in-laws are just the same. They live out of town in St. Louis, and they come down 2 to 4 times a week or a month, and we're very fortunate for that.
Did this experience of going through the challenges of like not knowing that the business is going to come back, like did that give you a deeper appreciation for what your role is? And I mean, you're like feeding the community for one, right, with these concepts, but you're also such a big part in people's lives. I mean, there's milestones that we experience within restaurants. We have birthdays and anniversaries, and we have our first shot out at Finnegan's and all that. I mean, what does that mean to you personally, to be the person that created that moment?
I think that's like one of the things that first like really intrigued me about the restaurant industry, though. Like, a lot of people, when you go out, you're doing it for positive reasons. Like you said, for birthdays, graduations, family get-togethers. People who go out typically are in excellent moods, and for you to be a part of that special moment. One of our teachers celebrated her 30th wedding anniversary, and we were able to create that for her. That was very special for me because I knew it was special for her. You know, a lot of other people aren't as fortunate, whether you're working, you know, in healthcare. You know, you can see some sad stories and whatnot. Like, for me to be able to see mainly like positive milestones in people's lives is an honor for sure, and to be able to see that on a daily basis is truly lucky.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for joining me, Anne. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, no, me as well. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. You can subscribe to No Ceiling from SBJ Podcasts wherever you find your podcasts, or watch videos from the interviews by visiting sbj.net/No Ceiling. This show is produced by AdSmith Studio, with special thanks to Dustin Henderson and Joe Stearns. Photography and design by SBJ's Mackenzie Robinson. American National Insurance is the show's presenting sponsor, with support by Great Southern Bank. I'm Christine Temple, and this is No Ceiling.